the 50th time this has happened on the planet Earth. Anne Waldman has been there for every single one of them. That's pure mania. Oh, you go ahead. That's pure mania. I'm going to say the run of show, and then I'm going to say something else. So the run of show is SWANEE Astrid reads first, introduced by Vera, all the way from Milan to do this. Next, Kelly KRUMRIE, introduced by Jason Lapellis. Then Jalynn Chapman, introduced by Kendra. And, Eric. Jalynn is going to be introduced by Eric, sorry. Then Andrew, who will be introduced by Kendra. And Margaret Randall, introduced by Sarah Caldiero. Yes, an amazing extravaganza for everyone here in this room. Whether you've been here all 3 weeks or whether or not you're just joining for the evening, we welcome you all. We welcome the people who are watching perhaps on the YouTube channel. And then I'll say, we'd love it if you all come to the translation panel tomorrow at 1. We'll also see a screening of a film on Etel Adnan called Sun and Sea. And then the translation panel is translation as experiment, trope, and practice. And Andrew Schelling's going to give a lecture a little later in the day. And then the student panel. So it's like a whole day of programming for you. And you're all welcome to it all. I did a little bibliomancy for tonight. I didn't know that it was going to be such a intense cluster, but it is. So I've been living with this ghost proposal risograph that says Free Palestine. I think it's a really good idea. And then I opened up the California poem and I read, "The politician stands in sunlight, vice like an oil swimming at the surface of his body. All of human history is lying in the grass, in nature. There is nothing we can do to escape it." And then we make mayhem with photocopiers during this festival, and sometimes they send word back that things are not all right. This is a glitch of pages from Arab Apocalypse. And glitch, for those of you just joining, was much in the air and in the work last week. A yellow sun, a green sun, a yellow sun, a red sun, a blue sun, a sun, a blue, a red, a blue yellow sun, a yellow red sun, a blue green sun, a yellow boat, a yellow sun, a red and red, blue and yellow sun, from the river to the sea.
Hello. SWANEE Astrid is a poet-scribe from Sacramento, California. They say she was born there, but to me, she came directly from the earth and descended from the Flatiron Mountains, surrounded by a flock of birds to protect this magical space. She has a BA degree in literature and writing from the University of Iowa and an MFA from Naropa University. This is where I met SWANEE during SWP in 2015. I remember being a bit scared of her at the beginning, and also thinking, wow, è una strega. She's a witch. This was almost a decade ago, and over the years I had the honor and pleasure of becoming SWANEE's friend. She has been an editor for Earthwords, Vestal Review, and Bombayian Literary Journal, and is launching her new press, VIBRISSAE editions, later this summer. A press that will sense the world around us and bring it back to us. Every time I see SWANEE, she has too many new ideas. She's thinking about a new project, a new press, a new way of getting people and their art around a table to have a conversation and hopefully also a good meal. SWANEE doesn't only write poetry, she makes it happen all around her. She has served on the boards of the Sacramento Poetry Center and Collective Aporia, of which she's a founding member. She has also been an executive assistant to the Jaipur Literary Festival at Boulder from 2015 to 2018, and since that year she has been the program coordinator for the summer writing program at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics. SWANEE has written and performed her own shows, such as the Preludium Ex Machina, Naropa MFA Festival 2016, and The Beat Drags On, Boulder Art Weeks 2016 and 2017. And for such venues as, sorry for the pronounce, José Montoya Poetry Unplugged, Avotia Palabra, Mutin Information Café, Fox Theatre, and the Lighthouse Writers' Workshop. In the past years, SWANEE has opened her house to me during SWP, and I couldn't imagine this place without her. Her house is a magic sanctuary, jars filled with roots and herbs, the continuous sound of the fountain in the living room, the books of all the heroes next to which I sleep, Anne Waldman, Margaret Randall, and Bobby Louis Hawkins, amongst others, and SWANEE's beautiful two boys, Bruce and Chester, who have been purring and keeping me company during my dawn work mornings, and so has SWANEE, who doesn't seem to need sleep during SWP, and who is a witch, but a practical one, of the 21st century, with a remedy and a word of advice for everyone, and the incredible patience and ability to organize poets. SWANEE's area of research include also astro-anthropology, Nordic animism, language permutation, world building, ecofeminism, and contemporary mythopoetic narrative frameworks. In July 2021, SWANEE gave a talk on Valkyrie poetics for the Hidden Woman United Conference as an artistic response to environmental leadership through the metaphor of the Valkyrie as embodiment of the feminine warriorhood necessary for the battle against climate change. This talk was revised and published by the Wisdom Body Collective in their Works in Progress series in 2021. She is currently expanding this work to include an analytical appendix of all 39 Valkyrie mentioned in Old Norse texts. SWANEE says, "The poem exists before it is so told. It is divinatory, both outcry and response. These primal elements work with language to reveal motives as in music and create the environment of the unfolding concept. SWANEE creates worlds and travels effortlessly between the current and ancient worlds, both in her works and in her life. She makes me believe in magic, and I very rarely do. Please join me in giving the most magico benvenuto to SWANEE."
I'm almost too humbled to read now. Thank you, Veta. Especially on an occasion such as a summer writing program evening, during the 50th anniversary reunion on an evening with a dear colleague, Andrew Schelling, and Margaret Randall, like one of my heroes in queerkin family. And Kelly, we met last year, but I think you are so cool. So here we go. Since we're talking about archive so much, I'm going to read a lot of, like all of the material I'm going to read touches on what Vera so eloquently foregrounded. I'm going to read just a small excerpt from Valkyrie Poetics, especially because it just sort of how I think about translation. And since that's coming up tomorrow, I wanted to plant this with you all. I'm thinking of the carrier wave and all the possible modulations of sound. I'm thinking of the incredible technologies of the body and its many politics. How do we draw on energy source? How do we create language from this? And what is language? What gives meaning to sound? I'm also thinking of the kind of energy transfer, otherwise known as communication, which occurs between kingdom and phylum. What does it mean to hear a caged bird sing? That at 8 p.m. during the beginning months of the COVID-19 quarantine, we humans howled along the Front Range because howling brings the pack together, saying, "Here I am in relationship with you." I also want to evoke the multilingualness of birds. Birds are important when thinking about the Valkyrie, and especially my own encounters with translation. First, translation is an act of love. Springtime found in words cracking open from weathered seeds, tongued by hungry warblers. A text becomes a nest. Some of us are bowerbirds in our neatness and artistry of organization and patterning. Others are magpies in the collection of seemingly random baubles, but striking in its shiny, luminous curation. From these nests, new ideas crack, molt, and emerge into flight. In translation, what do we hope to achieve? Understanding? What about words we feel but have no other language for, only to be complete in another's voice? In translation, do we take something and make it our own? These are all questions I considered as a poet with a habit for the medieval, looking for feminists in epics and epics in feminism. Just starting to learn what it means to decolonize my own overworked and highly paranoid American brain and re-indigenize my thinking. There was a starting point, but where to get to it? My mind turned to lava stones and runes, the mystical building blocks to the canon my family heritage has to offer. I'll just leave that there. So, SWANEE ASTRID, if you've received my emails, you know my last name is Swanson, so family heritage is obviously Swedish, Scandinavian, very Germanic, British Isles, you know, that blend. This first piece is untitled. It's about tattooing. It's also kind of a love poem, and it's about fire. Am I to be inked? Skin spurred, tapping of the needle, rhythm on the skin, spelling in a constellation of wild submission to beauty blooming in blood. Skin, this organ, breathing, our skins breathing, raked, loving flagellation, devoted to art, to the tongues, tonguing the skin. This is first and foremost an ode. A language yearning for life outside of poetry, playing language games, tongue tied round your wrist. The truth is to skin what ink is to the axe. The pen is to the axe what skin is to truth. To ink or not to ink. Spiritual armor on the skin. Hubris, howling wounds, coloring into something sacred, like magma. Everything born in blood, which is to say fire coming into form. I am writing in firelight, flickering like the first sapiens' sated belly of the fire, from logs collected, never a shortage of to burn, and moss, and feathers 2 by 2, hawk, blue jay, crow, and a small bit of wing, cutting teeth on story, the ancestors' tools. Hear meaning in its conquest of carbon, hiss and spark, get lost in its haze and texture, planting something in the embers. I, water baby that I am, birthing new continents of the rhyme and gyre of this gaze, blue rippling off the surface. Tonight, I am charming flames, and the blood-red crescent of moon. Some things bleed for us, and it's called lunacy, flame-flayed, revealing the nerve matrix in ember. There is a torso in the log, like a human in prayer, shaped like antler or swan in flight, knots for breasts, knots for heart and navel. When is this grammar of time? Fireplace is always on the north wall. Valhalla is not far, is in the valley where family gathers, a pack of wolves with a swan's name. I have but one heart, yet it exists in many things. Arid mountains, willow springs, glaciers, bodies of water fjording great expanses, feathers 2 by 2, third eye pinecone openings, leaves collected, moss antler offerings, bone crystals, arcane letters, poet goddesses, ecstatic nightclub dancing, hours coming together and falling away, midnight oil on skin, apple picking, dream houses, snakeskin, never-ending litanies of love. This heart is viscera, not without teeth marks, imprints of a warning, not to meddle. This life is delicate, is beautiful, is riddles in scars, scaling for or against us, is nothing to weigh. These next poems are sort of, I've written enough that there's a bit of a collection now, and I'm calling them Songs of Holy Darkness. This first one is for my mother. Die Valkyr. Misty softness making dark, a world locked in by fire and ice, spewing dichotomies, bellies retching this roiling love, a geyser in the voice, to long for, salt on your lips, like kissing ocean spray. Creation always begins with the morning after. Wind, if it were music, could be the aria of pounding hooves, the tinkling of enchanted rivers becoming lullabies of mother's eulogy. But the faces did not match the voice, were not timbral or new. The hiss of a newborn volcanic mass obscures in language mystery, and you can only see the feet of rocky petrified giants. I will miss you for the northern edge of the world. What directions may follow do return, Saturn's 10,000 rings versus your cardinal 1. I saw you die, Valkyrie, in my mother's eyes, just like poet dreams light up cremation. Scalded, what is a world without pathologies? Mercurial, flaring, flawed. We build our own mythologies out of stardust. Marrow vision. Though the rock split like split lip, though the grass dry like dead hair, though the earth crumble as the skin, though the root brittles as tissue, I imagine in the decay with only bones to dig up, if they be bones, not panpipes to the soul calling through soil, song about holy darkness. Do you hear me through the beyond? Detritus is a thin veil, is crawling with many eyes, between the layers and in the mouth, between the years. If I know where to find you, with every ripple in the earth I hear anew, this is what keeps me on the edge of listening. Wrapped in grief, so sublime, it is new, then old, then new again. Foundation of myself who never cried at birth, for the loss of the womb, for every sacred soul teaching love and resistance are subterraneous things, the bedrock enmeshed with a sense, what could be built here? Ancestors need no kingdom, no towers. The Hof is everywhere. Their hall is in the hail, the hearth made of heath, a sky clan awakening me to the air beneath my feet, more solid than ground, the family pack of wolves racing to take seat. This next poem is for my favorite tree in Settlers Park. O grandmother, O tree, you are my root. Willow, thou wilt. I feel the fates reside, breakthrough written on the boughs, in your gap, and I to the future, stretching away from the present well, roots towering beneath you, crown buried in the silt, spiraling through the staircase of my spine, my being in cosmic respiration, disorienting, change of states from solid to liquid to vapor, the rhyme from which I void, need fire from the earth body core, the atomic sparkling of synapses firing in an energetic fury. My heart is in the thaw, both freezing and steaming, when breath becomes occidental, blue to red and back again. I was in the tundra of myself, learning about the ice and the stars, the hum between constellations, a symphonic theremin at the brink of initiation, a descent into fire, a dream without sleep, easily dispatched. In every soul, a tree suspended between worlds. This is the last poem I'll read tonight. This is very much a work in progress, a poem that I've been it's a research-heavy poem. I'm rethinking and revisiting the Voluspa, which is the first poem in the Poetic Edda, and it sort of sets the stage for Norse cosmology. We learn about the creating of the world, the different beings and entities, how they interact, Ragnarok, the ending of the world, and then how it is remade at the end. So here we go. This is the first time I'm sharing this with folks, so thank you for this gift. I just realized I sent the version before I hit save. So, you're gonna get half this poem tonight. I'm sorry. A witch's wisdom is unfolding, a vision told in mead. She, golden draught of memory, standing amid the flames, living in all times, speaking through the void. This is the world undone. An axe age, a sword age, shields be sundered, a wind age, a wolf age, ere the world be plundered. What more? Now is the time I shall tell the tale of weird unraveling, a song of never ending, a song of many cycles. This is a fomenting lamentation, the must upon the brew, as bees collecting pollen, as pine consumed by fire. All that chaos reigns shall birth the world anew. When the blade was first cast, when the spear was first flung, the first war was waged, came biting like the wolf, like mistletoe. All the beings of all the realms will come to pay their blood as tithing. An axe age, a sword age, shields be sundered, a wind age, a wolf age, ere the world be plundered. What more? Remember the name of the first man. Ask yourself the question, O warrior, where art thou? Already answered. We who exist in multitudes, spreading in toxic waste, blight upon the ash and elm, an infestation, emerald nightmares, beetles boring beneath the bark, declining brittle dryness, 100 million dead upon the score. See the fate that waits the world? What more? Thank you.
Okay, great. Hello. I'm introducing the wonderful Kelly KRUMRIE. Kelly KRUMRIE is a writer and teacher. She is the author of the books Math Class, Calamari Archive 2022, and her newest book, No Measure, which is forthcoming from Calamari Archive and will be published on October 1st, 2024. Look out for it. Her creative and critical writing also appears in journals such as Diagram, La Vague, Black Warrior Review, Full Stop, and the Journal of Modern Literature. From 2020 to 2022, she wrote a column for Tarpaulin Sky Magazine called Figuring on math and science in art and literature. She holds a PhD in English and Literary Arts from the University of Denver and teaches at the University of Colorado at Boulder, Naropa University, and the University of Denver. Kelly KRUMRIE writes in strata that shift. These strata could be tones or themes or morals even. But as the epigraph to her latest book, No Measure, suggests, the ground below Kelly's work is anything but stable. In No Measure, the I of the speaker is at first the one who measures. There is a you as well who oversees the measuring, sometimes from a creepy glass-enclosed control room. And there is also a chimeric we. And of course there is me, the reader, who chooses whether to inhabit the character of the one who measures or the one who oversees. Am I the I in the expanse, or am I the you in the control room? I bring in the perspective of the reader because this book so quickly implicated me in the act of reading that it feels disingenuous not to. The character and placement of the you, the I, and the we shifts as quickly as the book's environment does, and the reader must keep up. Beginning with the environment, Kelly writes, an expanse. There is ground here, sand and grass. There is the garden in the field rows of grass. But quickly the environment shifts so that the canyon opens its sides. Kelly raises the stakes in this built world with the careful description of my and your body, which is not fragile in her speaker's hands. The body molds to the landscape and it also holds its own, even when the reader believes that the speaker's body is in danger. Kelly writes, I spread the legs of the compass, draw a circle in the sand. One thing makes its mark in another. The reader begins to wonder about the legs of this compass. Perhaps legs are so easily spread open, but who decides which legs and who marks who? The power dynamic between the you and the I shifts when the speaker begins to announce herself strongly. Kelly writes, I am also an instrument. I factor here and here. There's agency in her prose. The I begins to touch the you. Your hip, I trail my finger along it, and the speaker's glasses glint like the control room. The reader sees glimpses of authorship and begins to wonder if perhaps this I is sitting at a desk making up this quote-unquote experiment. Kelly writes, this is my account. Where is yours? Kelly puts into stark relief the power that exists in her mind and our minds to conjure, and where does the conjuring end? Even as the ground of the text shifts, Kelly's narrative voice holds steady in its infinite complexity. Please join me in welcoming the wonderful Kelly KRUMRIE.
Hello. Thank you, Jason. And you did a good job of doing my work for me, so now I don't have to introduce it. And thank you, SWANEE, for going first, too, because now the mic is Kelly height. So we share that. But yeah, thank you all for coming. It's so nice to be back here. I super appreciate it. I'm going to read a little bit from my first book, Math Class, that Jason mentioned, and then a little bit from No Measure, the book that's coming out October 1st. Yeah, you can pre-order it via Asterism if you want, unless you think it's terrible. I'm just kidding. You might anyway. So math class, is, I guess, like a novel or a novella in fragments or little parcels, and it's set at an all-girls Catholic school. And it follows, yeah, I know, right? And then it follows some of the girls in a way that like uses language, borrows mathematical and scientific language. So not only are they like oppressed by being Catholic school, but they're also oppressed by being stuck in this kind of like permanent math class. So I'm just gonna read two pieces from it. The first one is called Interview, and it's set if you've ever driven west on I-70 through Glenwood Canyon, there's a little, on the north side of the canyon, there's a little hydroelectric power plant. And I one time took a field trip there with some elementary school students, and so this is set kind of in Glenwood Canyon at that hydro plant, and one of the girls is there to interview some of the workers of the plant. And also I wrote this in Laird Hunt's fiction workshop in 2018 at the University of Denver. So I thought, Laird, thank you. I thought it would be appropriate to read this tonight. I'm gonna take a drink. Interview. Tessa sees the curved top of the dam as the edge of a great invisible sphere. The dam funnels river water and sends it up a pipe. The pipe runs along the canyon high above the road, mostly behind the canyon wall, tunneling into the mountain, resurfacing where the rock folds in. Supports are bolted to the rock, and the pipe and the supports are painted yellow-brown. The only edge a sphere can have is the threshold between inside and out. Above the hydroelectric plant, the pipe turns sharply out of the rock and forms a chute downward. They show her, pointing out the window of the van. The water rushes to the turbines. Tessa and the men are on a sphere, and then there is the firmament. The van winds through the canyon along the river. Electricity is kind of like water, one says. The river flooded some time ago, but in her mind's eye, Tessa sees river water slowly rise over the road. The wooden floors of the plant had to be replaced. There are photographs of what it looked like before and during the flood. There is a difference between bringing water into the plant and water coming into the plant. On the floor of the van are dirty orange vests and bits of paper. A kayaker spins in an eddy. The pipe is wide and so high she isn't sure of the scale. She sees electricity as water in the pipe lapping up the sides. The river pulses with lightning. Is electricity fire that water can put out? She doesn't want to ask them that question, so she writes it down. Tessa sees an orb around herself, around each of the men in the van, and the other cars. One of the men pronounces it turban, and the other turbine, and this makes her afraid to inquire further about the turbines, because how can she say it? What she wants to ask is, how does electricity come out of the turbine? Up, the canyon's rims form two edges. A few days before, Tessa and her friends had ridden on a giant swing that swung out over the north edge of the canyon, and she looked down to find the river and the road. See that there, the driver says, pointing toward a part of the pipe that curves along the canyon wall. The van brakes sharply before a group of bighorn sheep hesitating beside the highway barrier. They turn, and each leaps up the rock. Oh. This next one borrows some language from Euclid's Elements, which is ancient Greek geometric proofs. I know, it's really good, the first one. The others don't hold up, I'm just kidding. Okay, it's called Joe's Pencil is an Extremity of a Line. Her arm drapes over the desk. This classroom plays rain sounds. Her arm can't quite. It holds a pencil. The pencil is in her fingers, which hang over the edge of the desk. The desk's chrome frame gleams, but the top is a matte brown plastic. The seat, hard red plastic, or something. She doesn't know what it's made of. None of it. The pencil, her arm. Thinking, is supposed to travel from her brain, down her arm, into this hand, out a pencil onto paper. The pencil's extended in the air, though, moving with her breath. Is this thinking or proof of it? On a given paper, describe a circle, her head. Through a given point on it, an eye, draw a finite straight line to where? A tangent. With her head on her shoulder, her arms the line, or the invisible thought in it, or the information from the teacher she's supposed to record, not her neighbor's rustling paper, not the rain sounds, though they're there, not the sounds in the hall either. Don't think about the windows or the desk's material, but this material, a circle and its parts. Okay, for math class. Now I'll read a bit from No Measure, which Jason so kindly introduced and described perfectly, so I don't need to say anything else about it. I talked a little bit about it last Monday during my lecture, but we've got a desertification project and 2 researchers out there who start fucking is basically the plot. But it's about measurement and observation, right? And how those procedures are being understood and documented by the speaker. But it's a series of prose poems, so I'm just going to read a spattering of those from across the book. So No Measure. It's got this lovely ruler on the cover. Okay. It's bright here and windy. An expanse, a salt flat, a great basin, low shifting dunes, rocky washes, mountains at all horizons, a near sun, all surfaces radiant, glittering scales of mica and angled quartz, light in my eyes. Again and again, I come here. An instrument is scored for my measure. That is, it tells me what to look for. Its notches name a distance, its units an account. I have an array of these, wooden and metal rulers, a wound tape, a clicking wheel, a hanging scale, and string, and pencils. I hold a tool up to something still. To measure is to align, to measure against. The string is slack against the grass. The string does nothing. I do. I spread the legs of the compass, draw a circle in the sand. One thing makes its mark in another. Oh, what is the grass to the air? The desert is clear, sun-bright reflection of light off the light sand and rock. Clear, transparent, and radiant at once. The brightness is exact or collapses what's seen now. Not disaggregated, not void, up a glassy surface, out imperceptible array. It needs collision, no, the wind. Or the wind is it? I see through it. Only in distance is there air here, only in what the grass gives off or doesn't let go of. I climb the stairs to the control room. You let me in. Bright white desert. At the window, I picture you here. You stand at a dial, can handle an instrument. You ask, what would you like to measure? Desert white hot, your lattice, what pattern, my direction, grass and water? I can't answer. I lie down in the grasses, their tops waving, bending down, rough seed pods tangled in dead stalks. The shadowed sand is cool on my back. This is my account. It's made of observations as co-present measurements that are discretized. If I turn just right, crystalline, you take off my glasses. I know, right? See, I perceive the nearness of things and their remotenesses. Your hip, I trail my finger along it. There is ground here, sand and glass. Split my vision, show me the desert all at once this instant. Wires glint along the grass blades, tall grasses, thin as wire, green and yellowed, brown and white. A mass tangled and dry at the bases, in and out of sand. The grass is along the wire, not much wider than it in places, and blank spots in the line where the grass has died and been culled, cleared out. Tall, thin grasses, mostly still, mostly upright, then bending over, then broken, then green and dewy, then letting off seed, then emerging between the rows at the edge of the building beyond their field. Then only in record, then on the screen, then plotted, then averaged. Their mean growth, their mean intake, their mean grip on the sand, their mean hold on my eyes, their total mass, their variable release, their explicit form, their inching, their width ceasing, their trace on my knees. Weather expands the desert. Sand blows into the city. New grass locks it to the ground. The quarry dislodges rock. Sand is collected and melted into glass. Glass around the building, glass that responds to heat, glass in the control room, computer screen, glass in front of your eye. From sand in the desert, rock in the quarry, grass in strict rows, all documented, all contained in a valley until sent out. I imagine this valley. You and I are here. Records, matter slipping through my fingers. The scale of the landscape hard to grasp. I'm deceived by the nearness of things and by their remotenesses. I'm being explicit. No matter. We're of no measure. My mind's eye, my attention, parts grasses to find your hands. Grasses part to find your hands. If I keep writing glass, I can see what it's made of. Each procedure here, a transformation or an extraction. Your remoteness, I want to be pulled out into. I know the difference between the possible and the actual, the particle wave collapse. Perception is confined to the present. I can't know what glass is. Its formation is liquid, not crystalline. The molecule's position's variable. To know the window is to be wrong. I see the desert through it. You look at me through it. I want to move through. I want to know what's behind it. I want what's behind it, not only what arrangements make it. The sight of the window, the collapse when I look, is my error. Today, you don't come down from the control room. I look up at the window. We know what glass is. The grass yellows, a clear and indifferent sound of weather. It rains. We run up the stairs. I start to tell you something. The desert grows dark. You go to the window, press your hands against the glass. I try to speak. I have no sound. When the hail settles, I'll go down and clear it out. Now you record the event, set your notes on the table. I try to walk over. Look, I leave no trace. When I move, you don't see. It's the grass in your eyes, the weather. There is no sound. I take your hand. From here, I can see so far. It rains. I have to tell you something. Look, you pull me to you. The desert is dark. No sound. I know. You press your hands to. There is no sound. When I move, you see. Close your eyes. The desert is dark. Hail makes sound. I don't try to speak. Out the window, it rains. You press my back to the window. With your eyes, record this event. No, no sound. The rain, I start to. In your direction, no, it's clear out. Yeah. Thank you.
Horatio Beethoven for the archive. Jalynn Chapman is a good person. Has anyone ever said that in one of these? She is kind and caring, and she really listens. She believes in us, the human species, despite the horrors we are capable of, which she looks at unflinchingly. She is able to somehow hold simultaneously the inevitability of breach and the seed of repair. the overwhelming grief of this world, and the joy that can be made here. Perhaps this is because she is a mother. Jolene writes, "After you have a baby, the world is inside of you, and you are inside of it. It's like you get the baby out of you and the world fills the vacancy. It's like we're either together or we're nothing at all." There is a sadness in Jolene's work, attended by a vital questioning. Questions like, is it possible to maintain the feeling of the emergency so that out of the emergency there can be an emergence? Can we transmute this feeling of helplessness in the face of atrocity into something truly meaningful and productive? This is the age of taking action, Jolene says, but we do not know how. But Akila Oliver says, the prose of Jolene Chapman is evidence that paradigm shift is possible. The dangerous capitulation to dichotomy, you or me, us or them, it doesn't work. We must listen to each other, and we must humanize each other. How else can we emerge from this emergency together? I found a way, Jolene says, to enter the dark and to find in it hope. She says, every path leads to our unity with one another, even the darkest path. Jolene Chapman is the author of To Lim Lying In, winner of the Pank Nonfiction Book Contest in 2020, and Beast Life from Calamari Archive in 2016, which Ariane Zvarchas called a sumptuous feast and a rotting, grotesque and greenly lavish all at once. She also authored the chapbooks A Thing of Shreds and Patches from SA Press in 2016 and Bear Stories from Calamari Press in 2008, and curated the interview chapbook The Form Our Curiosity Takes, SA Press 2015. She has been the editor-in-chief of the Kerouac School's Bombay Gin Journal and co-editor with Michelle Naka-Pierce of Something on Paper, curated the What Where reading series, Women of Naropa reading series, and Kavayantra Press reading series, and designed for Naropa the Allen Ginsberg Visiting Fellowship. She has taught at the University of Denver, the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, University of Colorado Boulder, University of Central Florida, Lighthouse Writers Workshop, and Naropa, where she was the director of the Low Residency MFA and the BA MFA Program Coordinator. She currently coordinates the MA in Creative Writing, Literature, and Pedagogy specializations at Regis University in Denver. That's the Cliff Notes, y'all. It's an 11-page CV. Jolene is also a prolific essay writer and a rigorous academic scholar, and she's one of my all-time favorite teachers. I can say with total certainty that the person I was before I took Jolene's literary criticism course could never possibly have completed a master's level critical thesis. What I learned from Jolene's teaching style and from her work is that so long as we engage honestly with the world and bring to that engagement the loving kindness and compassion that make this life worth living, we will make it. I can't explain it, she writes, this feeling of hope. We could all use a little of that hope right now. Yesterday, I was talking to SWANEE, and she said, the powers that be want us divided. Jilin writes, I must be willing to be with you and to become something else entirely. She writes, my sense of responsibility for the things I love is a torch. The things I love are in me, and I am in them. She writes, allow yourself to be intimate with other people so they can reflect back to you who you are. Thus, our charge as writers is not to vilify each other, not to reify our most painful emotional experiences into factional binaries and codify our most virulent angers, but to utilize language as the bridge it was made for. As Alice Notley once put it on this very campus, to talk to each other. Sometimes, Jilin says, I can't understand what it means to live on this earth with so many other people, or what it means to be a presence among so much absence. Now, write a poem to document this. Please welcome Jilin Chapman.
Thank you so much, Eric. I don't really cry that much anymore, but I do a lot of it at Naropa. But that, I just can't, yeah, it's just a lot. Thank you so much. I just feel so lucky to be here and to I know I've seen so many of you, even if we haven't talked, I've seen so many of you here, and I just feel so lucky to see us all growing old. I think that I just feel very fortunate that we get to grow old and to witness that in each other. And that you all get to see me grow old, I just felt really seen and loved. Yeah, thank you to Jeff and SWANEE and Anne for welcoming me back. That's kind of the best case scenario, that you can leave to do something you need to do, and then people are like, but you're welcome to come back whenever you want. That I just feel really grateful for that. Okay, so I was gonna print out new work, but then my pink ink was gone. Even though I wasn't going to print anything in pink, I still wasn't able to print anything at all. So then I thought about something that was already printed, and it's my book. So I'm going to read from that. I just wanted to find the part that I wanted to read, which I don't know if I've ever actually read it. And it seems like it disappeared, too. I'll just look in the table of contents. I think it's on page 46. There it is. Okay, everything that is illuminated becomes a light. They said we would first feel that something was very wrong. Animals would fall silent, but humans would weep. Crickets would begin to chirp. Birds would return to their nests. Bats would fly. The hawks would hunt. They said that we would look at one another, and it would be like seeing each other in another lifetime, familiar yet distant and opaque and colored platinum. The world would look brittle, then surrounded by dawn. They said that we would feel an emotion that we never felt before, and that the emotion would be tethered to this experience. But to be certain, they said, anything less than totality would be nothing like this at all. Sorry. When the moon passed between the Earth and the sun on August 21st, 2017, our backyard in Colorado was approximately 200 miles from the path of totality, which meant that 11:46 a.m., the moon would cover 93% of the sun, which they said would be like any other day. Such is the brightness of this star. And still, my brother and I took the children, our paper glasses, a colander, and a piece of white paper into the backyard. I wore a wide-brimmed hat but forgot to apply sunscreen to the children's white skin. The baby was strapped to my body and sleeping. My daughter tripped around the yard, digging with her shovel into pots of dirt, picking unripe tomatoes. Through the glasses, the world went completely dark, and then, after some searching, there was the sun, an aperture of orange light into which the darkness was encroaching. We could not get the colander thing to work. I bounced and swayed the baby. I held his head in my palm and retreated into the shade cast by the trees. We tried to hide our looking from my daughter so that she would not be compelled to stare into the sun, but we grew more excited as the moon moved over it. We said to each other, "I see it, how strange." The temperature changed. The blue of the sky darkened. My daughter appeared as if she had been burnished. The sun through my hat sprinkled bean-shaped sequins of light across the baby's cheek and neck. And then we noticed two crescents of light, like lemon rinds on the flagstone. And then there were slivers of light, like down feathers or like the leaves of a bamboo in a Japanese painting, shimmering on the side of the house. And then we noticed that there was still so much sunlight, but we were not compelled to take shelter from it. It was no longer hot, and we were no longer squinting. The garden and the grass and the shadows that framed the yard became navel blue, and the temperature was cool as in morning or near the ocean. The world was both dark and soaked in honey. The sun was only a thin reed of light, and yet it illuminated everything. All of this happened in reverse. The moon passed the sun slowly, and the world gradually brightened, and the air became warmer, and the sky became lighter, and we went inside because it was then too hot, and the children did not have protection from the sun. I was tenuous, splintering, and parched, a field that needed just a spark of lightning to go up in flames. I wanted an insight, a sign or feeling produced by this phenomenon that would save me, some kind of magic. But I was equally terrified that when the moon covered the sun, I would never emerge from the penumbra. The birds roosting in their nests would understand it was day, would reappear singing to one another about food and territory. But I, who relied on a handwritten note to brush my teeth, make the bed, and take a walk, might never return from the false twilight. Mostly everything happened, and mostly we did not notice it. In The Rings of Saturn, W.G. Sebald tells the story of Thomas Abrams, an English farmer who for 20 years or more labors at the construction and miniature of the Temple of Jerusalem. The work, ongoing and painstaking, attracts visitors from all over the world, including American evangelists who, unlike the historians and archaeological experts concerned with accuracy, and his family concerned with his sanity, asks Thomas if the temple is inspired by divine revelation. If it had been divine revelation, Thomas replies, why would I had to make alterations as I went along? In the final analysis, our entire work is based on nothing but ideas. Thomas tells the narrator, ideas which change over the years and which time and again cause one to tear down what one had thought to be finished and begin again from scratch. Is the construction of the temple a wretched waste of time or a model of eternity? After watching the opening scene of Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev, I felt compelled to do something, to participate in it in some way. I wanted to recreate the images which I found beautiful and singular, but in language. I wanted my impressions to be an aura, and around the words, a complex and ineffable saturation of feeling and thought. I wanted all of this to happen in a text, and I wanted other people to read that text, and if not feel and think as I did, to feel bewildered and capacious, or at the very least to feel interested. I wanted the limbing to be an enlargement of what existed, not so much a model of eternity as a performance of infinity. Sorry, I feel like my gum is bothering me here. It's not right to bring it up here on stage. At first, I wrote the scene almost exactly as I saw it. It was an act of faith to do this, to trust that seeing was enough. But the words were not as elegant as the images, and I could not help but to attempt an interpretation of the profuse light and shadow. And then my sentences aligned themselves with time, the time of the movie, because after all, a film is not just image, but the duration of images. Through this process, my attention became more focused on the horse at the end of the scene, the horse that seems to have no relation to the scene at all and that is not dying but appears to be. In a Texas dirt field, I had seen a horse do this same kind of writhing, and I had taken photographs of it long before I saw this film. This coincidence alone seemed like a revelation. I kept writing it out and editing and adding words, but still the writing didn't resemble the feelings I wanted to have and that I thought a reader might have too. I wanted there to be a kind of ecstasy and even a kind of luxurious agglomeration of images and sensations, which I understand now might be why the black and white film and the very white church and the dark horse were so compelling in their duality. But I was not producing this ecstasy in my words. I could not achieve it. At first, it seemed inexplicable that in trying to achieve ecstasy, I was becoming interested in miracles. Although in the film's 15th century Russia, it would have felt miraculous to fly or to witness a human flying, and was drawn specifically to images of another miracle, the Annunciation. These images enchanted me with their lilies, rays of light, gilt sunburst doves, Gabriels with spectrumed wings, beautifully demurring Marys. I had no pious feelings for the event, but its varied depictions produced a sense of plenitude and even well-being. And now I realize that at least one of the connections between Tarkovsky's opening scene and the Annunciation was a single 15th century depiction attributed to Petrus Christus. Unlike most depictions of the Annunciation, which offer the scene to viewers in a parallel plane, this depiction places the viewer above the scene and to the right, as if we look down on it. We are almost exactly parallel to the tiny dove encased in sharp rays of light that accompanies Gabriel from above. This perspective resembles Tarkovsky's camera angle when his character Yefim takes flight. Instead of watching Yefim trying to fly from below, we join him. We move away from the facade of the church and we look down at the other men, some of whom watch us rapt. We hear the exuberance in his breath as if it is our own breath. We are a single floating being. We are a miracle. When I struggled to produce the ecstasy of these miracles, it was December, and for a long stretch of time, snow covered everything. The light suffused my thought. It was pale and sharp. It was sometimes silver. The shadows stretched along the path we took to the lake. The geese and ducks, still very dark and covered by snow, were huddled near the shore. We mistook the birds for rocks until our footfall scared them and they fluttered gently. Some days we went to the indoor pool and let the humidity warm us. The sun entered through a skylight and penetrated to the cool blue floor. It seemed to activate the smell of chlorine and mildew as if they were particles of the sun. When our swimming stirred the water, light, clean, and old, sparked frenetically off the surface. It suffused my thought, but I cannot say what difference this made. I only realize it now, remembering myself in that state. When I write, I think I feel something shift, a lifting current, perhaps a storm, and then the air settles into stagnancy and heat, and I have gone nowhere as far as I can see. When I write about Andrei Rublev, my friend Ella sends me images of comets from the Book of Miracles, a 16th century German manuscript that illustrates apocalyptic events and meteorological phenomena. Over the course of the next 2 months, we write to one another about water turning into wine, Pentecostal fire, and speaking in tongues. Ella understands this language and symbols, Ella understands that language and symbols constitute miracles, but that miracles are also something else entirely, not the least of which is a center of gravity around which people cluster. For better and worse, we both grew up in these clusters. They were the structure of our childhoods. And in these clusters, we were taught that everything mattered, that anything could be interpreted for its meaning. We lived a good part of our lives expectant. I told Ella what I was writing and how it troubled me. If one believes in the miraculous but does not experience it, she wrote, there is anticipation. Or it's like one is open and available to the miracle, but the miracle has no passage through which to enter. I responded, thinking of the protrusion of language through a rupture in the heavens, the aperture in the tabernacle. In most depictions of the Annunciation, Gabriel interrupts Mary's reading scripture. Her finger holds her place in the book, as if, when he has left, she might return to what she was doing. This is an interpretation, but not the right one. Even as so many religions had at their core the codification of miracles and the requirement that one believe them, a miracle cannot be a miracle if it can be reasoned, I told Ella. Ella wondered if I was writing an elegy for the miracle, and that seemed true, but now I wonder if I was writing to think one into being. It was December, and I wanted to be pregnant, had been unsure about having children for a very long time, and then suddenly certain but could not make one. I did not believe in miracles, but I longed to be proven wrong. So in a way, there was an opening, the opening of desire, where before there had been ambivalence. In searching for images of the Annunciation, I found William Bell Scott's engraving of William Blake's depiction of the Nativity. In the image, Joseph supports the exhausted but unsoiled Mary. Her cousin and midwife, Elizabeth, kneels in front of her with a tiny John the Baptist on her lap. She extends her hands toward the Christ child who, fresh from the womb and enveloped in light, floats suspended between the two women. To undermine the miracle of the virgin birth, to make the image a question, I cropped it to isolate the cruciform baby and Elizabeth's outstretched hands. Is Elizabeth receiving the child, or is she offering him back to the light from which he came? Here is a kind of annunciation, when the light inside yourself tells you a secret about yourself. A few weeks into the new year, a sharp gold shaft parted the heavens with a child on its blade. I just want to make sure I'm not reading too much. Okay, I'm not. But I might skip some parts. We'll see. In our correspondence, Ella told me about her first experience viewing the aurora borealis. It was unexpected, yes, but part of the wonder was that it had nothing whatever to do with me, she wrote, with life on Earth. But it brushed against us. This may not be precisely miraculous, but could that otherness be a quality of the miraculous, she asked. I thought of things that had worked out well for me as potential miracles, but most were simply the privileges of race and class. I thought of the shapeless pain and of the precise kind and the possibility that the miracle was that I deserved them. I thought that I may have come close to dying twice, but am alive now and consuming. And I thought of beauty in which great abundance, and I thought of beauty in such great abundance, it could not be called rare. Early in my failed attempts to get pregnant, I was given this is a hard word to say, hysterosalpingogram. In the procedure, contrast dye fills the uterus, and if the fallopian tubes are open, spills into the abdominal cavity. I watched on a screen as intractable, diffuse dye curled inside me like an octopus's ink. Why could I not get pregnant? Here was the illegible answer to the question. And then, many, many years later, this. Light enters a house as squares and rectangles, and yet the light that settled on the nursery wall was inexplicably the shape of the flow of dye through ovaries, auroral arc, tongue of flame. I began the day gently, holding their bodies in the bowl of mine, my head slung back, trying to sleep a little while the TV distracts them, inhaling the spray of their hair, until they notice I have not been giving them the milk and flesh of my attention, and this wounds them. They demand my patience, and I give it, my penance, and I give it. I feed them plates of bread and jam at their high-pitched petitioning. I paint the bottoms of their feet and press them onto paper. They do not understand it, but it pleases them to be touched by me, to be included in my design. I watch them shit and then clean them. I give them fresh air and jelly beans. I drizzle their dinners and honey. By evening, I am tired and hungry, filled with rage unique only to my love for them, and they sense this, my utter failure, and it hurts them. They yawn and cry and yawn for more stories toys, snuggles, soft wrestling, and eventually I refused them. I shut them in their dark, humidified rooms. I abandoned them to their thirst, their fears, to the degradation of sleep, when there exists in the world playgrounds to climb on, sweet foods to eat, breasts to suck, the miracle of my absolute presence. If they had been disappointed with life, it is because of me. Or more specifically, I am the embodiment of their disappointment, just as I was once the embodiment of their fulfillment. And I wager my desperate need to be loved by them on the hope that through the mortification of my flesh, these tyrants will become saints. Examining closely the images of miracles and the Book of Miracles, it's hard for me to think of miracles as preferable to the opposite of miracles. Famine could be a miracle, and so could the end of famine. According to the book, a miracle is a bad time separated from a worse time by a cleaving of the earth, while the more benign miracles are merely optical illusions. A golden circle rings the sun, the light spectrum unfurls, girdles the moon. Captions accompany these images, but they are mostly unhelpful if what one wants is to experience a miracle. The images and their texts tell us how 16th century Europeans understood reality, but they are no speculum through which to see my own miraculous life, unreasonably saturated as it is in unearned comfort. I can say that having received everything I wanted and more for many months, exactly as many months as the child is old, I have felt sadder, more anxious, more hopeless than at any other point in my life. I know that I am making an intellectual mistake, perhaps an imaginative one, or I simply lack skill. I keep wondering how it is possible to feel this way, how it is possible to make humans inside my body and to be so sad, how to love so absolutely, how to enjoy touching and smelling them, how to know instinctually how to care for them, to exalt them with my time and body, to feel my breath gather when I consider their beauty and ongoingness, and how to despise the day, to hate waking. The numinous must emerge through the hole in me the baby's made. In the deluge, waters rise from below and fall from above. Bodies emerge, legs, butts, animal heads, and then the water recedes and calms. It is grooved like a plank of wood. A mound of earth appears with wisps of grass, delicate as the head of a child. A rainbow palms it to be read as covenant or the edge where the Lord has stayed his anger. In the deluge, sulfur and fire rain down from heaven. Standing at the edge of the rusty flames, a figure of salt sparkles. The dew dries on the ground and leaves a faint flake, fine as frost. This miracle is the bread of the Lord. I'm going to skip through some of these miracles, although they're really good, I think. I mean, I didn't make them up. God did. Three suns appear in the east in the early morning sky, moving together until they merge as one. Fiery arrows and drops of blood appear in the sky. Fire falls from the sky. A bright rainbow arcs above a mountain range. A bright comet appears, a wondrous comet appears, giving off fire and flames in all directions. The sun goes dark, the moon blood red, an earthquake destroys the city. A burning torch like a tower falls from the sky. A great shaft of light moves toward an unusual star. The Lord's children see two moons. Stars land on the earth and scream when water is poured on them. Wars follow miracles, plagues follow miracles, famine follows miracles. Rainbows encircle the sun multiplies until there are three. In the distance, clouds wreathe circular rainbows. 5 suns appear in the sky. A sword, sometimes golden, sometimes red, appears over the sun, sometimes under it. A miracle is a chariot of fire drawn by horses of fire. It is an animal eating a child, a man walking on water, a child crying out for his father. A miracle is a parent who has reared children who rebel against him. Even animals are more obedient. But what of their glassine fingernails with which they eviscerate their faces? What of the patches of flaking eczema? What of the milia? What of the cyst near the bridge of the nose? What of the buttery shit of their infancy? What of their toes, pea-sized and sour? What of the yeasty folds? What of the milk blister at the peak of their lips? What of the waxy scales of their cradle cap? Of the curdling smell of milk rising from the places where once the soul was said to live? Doesn't the Lord God our Father see our delicate bodies and love us more? An almond branch means God will keep his word. A boiling pot of water means he will release disaster upon the earth. The Lord is always making light and spool where his hand came down in anger, is always saying, I promise this time it will be different. As the baby sleeps on my chest, I stare dully at the light. Through the Venetian blinds, it casts itself onto the open door of the bedroom. It takes the shape of horizontal bands cut off in jagged edges, alternating with overlapping circles stacked vertically. It reminds me of the rosary, though I have never prayed it. To keep in memory certain principle events or mysteries in the history of our salvation, and to thank and praise God for them. The annunciation of the body to the body, shipwreck of vomiting, my body the site of return, duration, and tractable otherness. Revelation of the body that was hidden, cleft, and seed-shaped, to be extracted from the womb, to be with their bodies, to be in a space of light, uncontained, to be in a place of absolute connection with the small white moths. These are the joyous mysteries. The luminous mysteries are blue light like vapor against a parchment-colored wall, the diffusion of ink through the ovaries, afternoon sun as it enters through the membrane of the eyelid, the flicker of light in the corner of the room, the green of the leaves, deep, dark, and absorbing, thin veil of dust on the table, thin glow of lanugo on the baby. To have been a kind of miracle to one another and to disappoint is a sorrowful mystery. A shadow electrified and buzzing like a small engine is an anxiety. I wanted to stop time, so I pressed down hard, and then wanted it to happen more quickly, so retreated. The resemblance of the distant tragedy to my tawdry anger, the despair of people crowded onto boats adrift in a vast water, the gleam of mylar blankets tucked under children's chins in detention facilities, to give life to another and to know it cannot be sustained, to be surrounded by joy and not feel it. And the glorious mysteries that eclipse anger, danger, the opacity of the other. One summer, by some miracle, the house did not burn down, that on my own I could travel to the place called Les Bleuets. The first time I felt it, perhaps the only time I felt it, a possibility. To be sure, there was the engulfing pain and the sudden relief. There was the bliss of the immediacy of my response to their need. And there was the certainty and simplicity of language, a tree in September, heavy with fruit, and the child's first word, apple. Thank you.
Que bueno. One more round of applause for Jalyn and SWANEE and Kelly. Thank you. Let's take 9 minutes and return. Home, 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 home. Home, 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 home. Hum 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 hum. That's Ann Waldman.
I don't know that there are enough people to hear the humming to actually come and reconvene.
Que bueno. Welcome back. And now, Kendra Richard.
Andrew Schelling. A poet, translator, essayist, and editor. Born in DC and growing up in Lexington, Massachusetts, in '73 he moved to Northern California to explore the wilderness regions of the Coast Range and Sierra Nevadas and to study Sanskrit and Asian literature at UC Berkeley. Received his BA in Religious Studies from UC Santa Cruz. Active in the Bay Area with a community of experimental writers, Zen practitioners, and wilderness advocates. An ecologist and naturalist, traveled extensively in North America, Europe, India, and the Himalayas. In 1990, began teaching Sanskrit and in the Jack Kerouac School. Active in land use and ecological issues in the American West, a student of natural history, teaching at Deer Park Institute in India and with California's The Public School, a free public space emerging from Occupy Oakland. His poetry founded on studies in ecology, linguistics, and folklore. In '92, received the Harold Morton Landon Translation Award from the Academy of American Poets for dropping the bow, Poems of Ancient India, and received 2 grants for translation from the Witter Binner Foundation for Poetry. Among his 25 published titles, a poetry collection, The Facts at Dog Tank Spring, a folkloric volume regarding language, Bohemian poets and wilderness, tracks along the left coast, and songs of the son and daughters of Buddha, translated with Ann Waldman. On Gary Snyder, Andrew wrote, "One purpose of poetry, its archaic, struggling simplicity, still makes it the strongest of the arts, is to point a way forward, not forward in a prophetic sense, simply that those who have walked the trail already show how things can be properly done. In old India, they believed that poetry regulates the emotions and helps order society. All those surging, chaotic passions that swirl through when you stand by the empty husk of someone once loved have a settled place. They are, in Snyder's economical words, the price of attachment." From his In Which Our Current Post-Coyote Poetry Gets Tracked to the 1970s, Andrew quotes remarks made about himself by Bob Arnold of Longhouse Publishers. He's a very curious devil regardless, has had his hand in a long span of poetry, reaching back to Sanskrit translations, some of his finest work, running a while with small press editing and publishing, yeoman bookshop work in California, sterling personal essays, and many years staffed at the Naropa Institute with the children of Albion. He's a maker and a doer. In honor of this week's theme, Insurgent Dreams, Radical Lineages, Andrew in the same essay writes, "But there persists an alternate lineage in North American poetry, which, with no apology, places translation and an ecological sense of the planet's poetry at the center of writing." Ending this paragraph with a line from the cantos, Andrew adds, "It can't all be done in one language." One review described his translation as rasa, or spirit juice, the key element of Sanskrit poetry. Throughout my time at JKS and Naropa and since, he has been my shaman of eco-poetics and the long poem. Introduced me to the Renga, the art of translation, and to poets and writers for which I am forever grateful. But most importantly, he taught me from the great Basho, do not seek to follow in the footsteps of the wise, seek what they sought. In the words of Abby, this is the most beautiful place on earth. Please welcome to this 50th year celebration of SWP, tonight in this room of poets and ghosts, for the archive, poet, translator, wilderness explorer, ecological advocate, fellow haiku enthusiast, folklore flower speaker, linguistic time traveler, mentor, and eternal seeker, Andrew Schelling.
Thank you, Kendra. I don't know if I can live up to all of that, we'll see, but I really appreciate that. Wow, 50 years, and 50 years, Jeffrey. I don't know who else, Eleni, Margaret, so many thoughts and memories. Since Kendra mentioned dropping the bow, I want to just, take a little time travel back to my first year at Naropa, really 1990-91, and I came into the writing office one day. Well, let me just first say that title for my translation, Dropping the Bow, comes from a 2,000-year-old poem. It's very beautiful, very compressed. Lone buck in the clearing. Nearby doe eyes him with such longing that there in the trees the hunter, seeing his own beloved, lets the bow drop. Anyhow, I came into the writing office and our work study at the time said, Andrew, there's a woman who's been trying to get a hold of you all morning by phone. And I had too much pride in those days, and I just decided I'd let her cool her heels for a little while. And eventually she phoned, and I was given the telephone, and a lovely woman introduced herself as working for the Academy of American Poets, which I'd never heard of, and told me that they'd awarded me the prize in translation. I was so naive, I had no idea you could get a prize in translation, or poetry for that matter. And I was taken aback, and I didn't know what to say, so I asked the only reasonable question, which was, how much money do I get? Song of the Sand Lily. In geography, as in ecology, every detail reflects the whole landscape. Let's use the sand lily, Leucocrinum, for the white-breasted goddess Leucothea. Odysseus, take my credemnon, and flung her bikini. Shreds of deer hide flutter from staffs and rock slabs on the tundra. Here's where the game drives of prehistoric October took place. But the real people of snow and thunder have gone underground. In this life, friendship being the keenest directive, I nose the car south on 285, a day's journey down the Arkansas, the Rio Grande, the wide, muddy Chama, blistered sagebrush edging the pinyon. When I stopped to piss, there were coyote bones under the juniper. Stars crackle over the sandias. I pull into Placitas, JB left the key. The door opens to a rash of wood, rawhide, scrap metal, pumpkin, and scapulae. The percussion orchestra, which brings detail to the unseen world. Ethnomusicology. At first glance, it's the xylophone clackers, then pebble-filled gourd shakers, a deer hoof rattle of California design, clang of the Chevrolet hubcap gong. By the drum set, a tortoiseshell waits. Waits for what? Scrape of the elk-jawed jagstick? Then the faint tune of the sand lily returns. Buy her a shawl, buy her a pipe, buy her a gong for the afterlife. White bones under juniper swept fear of death from me. Buy her a gong for the afterlife tree. That's the sand lily. Two other common names, glacier lily and also the dogtooth violet, which is because it's got long, sharp white petals. Speaking of flowers, I'd like to acknowledge this beautiful, ikebana here ornamenting the stage. I think it was done by Charlie, so if anybody likes it, thank you to Charlie. In 50 years, so many people have gone on ahead, and one of the recent ones, who is, many of us were fond years ago of around here, it was Jane Wodening. And I have a poem for her written long before she died. She died just several months ago, and she was, of course, Jack Cullum's sister, and Jack taught here for many years. So I'm going to read a little suite of 3 poems that are for Jane and for Jack. The she of the first poem is Jane Wodening. She talked about spearheads. At Caribou Lake, they had no notches. That's the Folsom style. Wood, sinew, leather, many plant fibers if you know how to harvest them. Meanwhile, quiver might go back to a Mongol word. Beads, do you know how hard it is to make a bead? There is a white bed of clay. You will not ever find it. You wrote a poem near it once. You used the word communist, a word that's fallen into disuse. Canyon of the ancients, tucked into the corner where there is no map. One question, where does a book begin? Does it begin the last 1,000 years? Paper, parchment, sheep's hide, palm leaf, bamboo. It changes what you think of the pictograph to see frog as a clan sign, horned figure pecked into desert varnish. It was cold the night Jack Cullum died. We had a dream. We were chipping acrostics into Precambrian rock. In his visions, he's composing acrostics. The dying enter a sphere of visions. This one's a no-shooting zone. The binding's Japanese, externally sewn. He inscribes it for me in running grass script. Black ink jotting left to right, scent of ozone in the atmosphere. Grief preys on the living, but not the dead, I hear. Footfall, Darjeeling, flute blade, sunlight, day. Can you give your name away? That's from a friend, a poet whose name I withhold. We all might have been going to have lived a long, long time in the future on this continent shaped by geologic force, outlaws and anarchists by the fire. Kishori Amankar, can you hear her sing the rain season song? She regulates the monsoon, the southern Rockies washed by thunder, skirts of rain trailing down valley. Can some riddler out there answer me? Why is love so difficult? Poem here that I had planned to read. I may have to revise it after hearing the stories of both SWANEE and Jolyn about the glitches with their technology and printing out. This is called Delete. In the once common world of paper documents, all sorts of items got lost, some tragic, some comic. Flood, mold, wildfire, chewed on by rats, recycled inadvertently, burrowing mice, unexpected fits of rage. Constricting shame made you throw it all out. Coffee stains or wine spill, disinterest, infuriating misplacement, white ants, car crash, eviction and your stuff impounded, gas explosion at home or at work, cat piss, copy centers lost it, puppy vomit, broken water pipes. In the digital realm, Edward Snowden says, there is no such thing as delete. I've often thought that this area is really defined by one plant that often gets overlooked. It's the kinnikinick, which is a ground cover that you find usually starting somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000 feet, and it goes up to around 8,000 or 9,000, 10,000 feet. And it's an Algonquin word originally that means something like mix it in. It's a smoking mixture. And it has common names like bearberry in particular, bearberry, bear tobacco. This is a poem about kinnikinick, which is also an interesting word. It's an 11-letter palindrome, if you can see it, kinnick. Palindrome is a word that reads both ways, frontwards and forwards the same. It turns out it's just one letter short of the longest palindrome in the English language, which is credited to James Joyce. Tat-tat-rat-tat. This is kinnick. Riddlers, rogues, and children. For several days, I've been reading about secret languages. The author calls them dark tongues. Speakers hide mysteries inside what they speak. There's a break in the storm, so I set off for the mailbox. 2 neighbor girls bounce down on bicycles. This is larkspur, says one, ditching her wheels. Silver lupin, kinnikinick, she swipes her hand at the leaves. And her name is Etalock, laughs the other. In law or the English department, we call it jargon. Vulgate or cant when swapped on the street. In England, someone called it bog Latin. Etalock, of course, the name spoken backwards. Colette, etalogue, same thing as dog and God. Colette returns to her bike. In England, at Crossroads, people heard ghost words. They called it peddler's French. But children do it better than rogues, riddlers, vagabonds, priests. So, apos, Sophie, apos for you. Let's look at that green leaf again. Its name a fiddler's trick. Forward is backward. There's a bear in the berry. He'll set you a riddle. Kinnikinick. Thank you. Huge, cloudy symbols of a high romance. That's a line from Keats. I could never write a line like that. Keats and Shelley and the lot of 'em said many things and said 'em well, but never stood to gaze upon a stone game drive wall splotched with black lichen, curling down a rock-strewn hogback pass towards Talus. Scant rain, much ice, the continent divides. 1,000 years ago, someone lined an oval pit with slabs of rock. Here's the shock blue alpine forget-me-not, tiny yellow pistols. And used the pits for what? Roofed with thatch to hide the hunters? Or shamans sang the bighorn in? In trance state, sounds called forth. At this elevation, many ways one has to call forth sound. Chant the 6 great odes of Keats. Hunch in a pit, finger the living spear shaft. Stiff wind from the west shreds the spoke-out words. Tender is the night. Hedge crickets sing. It all hides in the hyphen. Skyline, one long hazy pall of smoke. On the wind, blows all that burning oak drawn in from California. Seeking but not finding the master. This is another poem for somebody who's gone on before us, actually a graduate of the MFA program here at Jack Kerouac's school. His name will appear in the poem. Seeking but not finding the master. Where but the high tundra do you see such colors? Dry crimson, burnt orange, pale green, tawny gray. We have carried Mike O'Connor's ashes in a small parcel to fling for the wind. I envied you the cool friendship poems found in China. You envied India's spicier lyrics, us both perplexed, epidemic rage tormenting our planet. The jobs to store seeds of language, of rhythm, for the better world, there, in front, around the bend, out ahead. Tim Hogan recites mantras. Young master, you said. Mischief that blue eye, mock reverence on that tilted head, who held 2 passports, mystic songster, old Ireland. Be cinder on tundra, ash on the wind. I'm going to read a couple of poems that work with the translation from the Sanskrit of an old poem, and then I respond with a poem of my own. This is a poem by Sheila Bhattarika, one of the great early women poets of Sanskrit. She's only got 6 poems to her name that we know of. I'm going to talk more about these things tomorrow afternoon. So Sheila Bhattarika, and then a response poem. Down in the Fragrant Canes. Nights of jasmine and thunder, torn petals, wind flaws the kadamba trees. There's no blame. Spring comes, we simply get older. Yet my heart is the girls down in the fragrant canes. Oh, Narmada River, oh, thunder, oh, jasmine, moon on the sandbank. I thought we'd never, never stop fucking forever. Can you not see? Night drenched by moonlight. The poem with its fragrance. She has ritualized night in the bioregion, sanctified the years as they turn. Trees, wind, thunder, the seasons, the riverbank. In Sanskrit, she loves and lifts up her throat. Some utkantate, to grieve, to cry out with desire. And another one of these with an old translation. This is an anonymous one and a response poem. The Ballad at Cigarette Spring. In those days, everyone knew of our village. The men reckless with youth, a girl with her eyes so wild. Tonight they reminisce of the old days. They use the tune of a ballad, and I, who've grown old, hardly listen. 3 days on the trail to Cigarette Spring, 3 smoky nights by the fire. With blue paisley rag, we wipe breasts and armpits, scrub one another with dish soap. Why do old-timers rage their grammatical hearts out? Barefoot to tent, buck-naked dust of red canyons. How many more times will we do this? A crazy Jane, a mad old Tom, and the spade-foot frogs sang all night long their ballad. Gravel Cheesebox Hideout. These are names of canyons. Gravel cheesebox hideout. Two friends study the deep history of the Southwest. One makes inquiries from words, the other of dug up local clay, pots, bowls, and cups, terms like off-gassing, micaceous. Both find human beauties in mute rock. Why's the flute player piping on his back? What's the antler creature high up a cliff? In the open kiln, branch of juniper, hiss, speak it back, hiss to the ground, speaking the evil at Chaco Canyon back. That is, the old ones, their demagogues, slaves or someone duped by myth built the giant Pueblo complex. Today I write poems. Prose is too hard in this heat. The vessel goes brittle. It splinters. The news outlets say 130 degrees Death Valley this day. Do not try to master the secret techniques of power over others. Oh, Spirit, you've got further tasks. Canyons, the green mask, the yucca fiber brush, night, sleep, companions, the stars. And I'm going to end with a little song for Luna Luz. To cut no wood, to kill no beast, no hart, no hind, no boar. Give song to woodland berries sweet. Give song at Buckles Ford. It starts with if, with don't, with well. Inside the song, a dog must bark. Its eyes are dark, the dog beneath the moon that howls. And Arden's got no song at all. Yet listen close. You'll hear the forest call.
All right, one more. In a 2023 interview with City Lights, Margaret Randall says, "I'm in my studio, blinds drawn and door closed so it feels like a womb. I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, surrounded by the high desert landscape that has long nurtured my work. Within easy driving distance of Chaco Canyon, Abiki and the Georgia O'Keeffe country to the north, Acoma to the west, Sandia Crest to the east, and the funky little town of Truth or Consequences to the south, where a few nights ago, my wife and I celebrated my first 86 years with a relaxing soak in the thermal waters pumped right into our room at our favorite renovated 1930 motor lodge. This land, stolen by Spain from its native peoples, and then from Mexico by the voracious United States, scarred by border turmoil and alive with the resistance of indigenous tribes, Hispanic and Genzaro settlers, Buffalo soldiers, and European intruders, holds the energy I need to write. And she has been drawing this energy from all the places she has lived, starting in New York City, then spending over 2 decades in Mexico, Cuba, Nicaragua. I first met Margaret Randall at SWP in 2022. Amongst that sea of poets and writers, she stood out as a person of extreme action. In Los Caprichos, the Spanish painter Francisco Goya criticized the political, social, and religious abuses of his time. In plate number 43, The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters, he states, Imagination, abandoned by reason, produces impossible monsters. United with her, she is the mother of the arts and source of their wonders. Randall knows how to channel her imagination. Like Goya, she is indeed promoting that critical spirit. She shares her insights into our society as a poet, professor, scholar, photographer, translator, and social activist. When we examine her work, we discover what we could be if we were not so out of touch and distracted. Just last year, she spoke about the problems with online activists who like posts and share them, but are unwilling to go out and do the work. This is coming from someone who has spent the time, who has shown up in person for decades. Randall is the author of more than 150 books. Let that sink in. Some sources say around 200. Amazing. Look them up, buy them, support this amazing work that has been created. She currently lives with her wife, the painter Barbara Byers, and continues her travels to read and lecture. It is just a matter of time before the things of her imagination are proved. She celebrates her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren in her book, Vertigo of Risk. Children, where she says, children arriving one by one to share what I give and return the gift 1,000-fold. Their children and their children's children, unbroken line stretching from my hands. In life and books, she has been prolific. Randall leads us all to visualize the person you were meant to be. With deep respect and honor, Margaret Randall.
Thank you for that. Thank you for seeing me. "50 years. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, SWANEE. Thank you, all those whose names I don't know, but who I know are working to make this happen and continue to happen. I'd like to dedicate my reading tonight. There are so many ghosts, wonderful ghosts, loud-speaking ghosts in this room. I'm thinking of Aquila and Bobby Louise, Anselm, Jack Collum. I'm not going to remember them all, but I'd like to mention in particular someone we just lost, Jerry Rothenberg. Jerry and I never coincided here at Naropa, but we did a lot of poetry reading together over the years in New York, in the ruins of Paquimé, in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico, in Nicaragua at the Poetry Festival. And there's many things I could say about Jerry, but I guess the one thing I want to say tonight is my gratitude to him for introducing us to our own indigenous poetry in tradition of the sacred. Their animal sensibilities. I watched the newsreel, Men on Horses in Mississippi, 1964, and I wonder about the horses. I know all I needed to know about the men. But did those horses know who they were charging, the crimes they helped commit? Magnificent manes and sweat-coated bodies glistening in the heat of unequal battle, the stun of hoofs crushing everything in their path, deceitful dance of their legs, and great weight aimed at innocent prey. Even the depth of those millennial eyes gives no clue. We think we understand the animals we keep, but know little about those we use and abuse, imagine they feel as we do, or assume they have no feelings at all. In their animal sensibilities, do they resent where we take them and what we make them do? The dogs who stormed South African townships or lay at the feet of Goebbels, Hitler, Hess, India's sacred cows crowding traffic on New Delhi streets, the elephants who feed the memory and lions whose fathers. Something has happened to this poem. It suddenly turned into Spanish. So I guess that's all you get of that one. Sorry about that. I started out trying to translate, as you probably could tell, but that didn't work. Poet without words. I still hear those garbled sounds, feel my tongue like thick mud trying to make words. Translation didn't step in when I opened my mouth to speak, and the words fell apart. My ears were working and my mind, but my tongue wouldn't obey what the brain commanded. And all I heard was a thickness, like glue or steel wool scouring the inside of my skull. I cannot remember what I was trying to say as my own words fought me and won 2 or 3 minutes. I still hold the mirror of your eyes, love, searching for meaning in mine, shared razor edge of fear. Enough for the word stroke to take shape in my head like a knife dipped in fire. When the poet goes mute, the universe stops. I don't know if she was taunting me for those moments of terror or whispering in my ear, say goodbye to tomorrow. My map. I venture onto the map of my memory, the map my memory opens up, its shifting elevations taking my feet to places that feel new, even as old images emerge from shadow. Land features and human construction hold their ongoing dialogue poets' call and response in a language sharpened by desire. Symmetry and asymmetry want to capture the same spaces illuminated by a light that changes second by second. Flashes of that light change color and shape, presenting me with new stories, even at this late date. No one who accompanied my years speaks in a rhythm I understand, but I am listening now for wind and silence as they search for safety and comfort while honoring a landscape that embraces what we impose upon it in our arrogance. My map asks me to go slow, to savor moments lost the first time here. I am transported to a time before the digital highway made everything too easy, erasing those narrow trails that sang awake my youth. When the time comes, I know I will be able to shed my skin, lay down on a sun-bleached rock, and re-enter the dream begun so long ago. Calling my name. Is this better? Thank you. Thank you, Eleni. Calling my name. Bombs fall in Gaza. This story, told again and again, invades my sleep with its shrill sounds and deadly heat. Ravaged borders disappear onto a badly patched map. Origins emerge from the shadows. Bully power makes no excuse as it charges a frightened world. Words like invasion, genocide, and collateral damage move soundlessly on digitized tongues, offering empty explanations, dancing a fascist jig to the rhythm of my pulse. In this sheltered space I call home, I emerge from the warmth of a perfect bed. The scent of coffee lures me to a kitchen where breakfast awaits. Sun floods clean streets, but the acrid smell of burning flesh nudges, intrudes, calls my name. In a register I can barely hear, through the din of false prophecy and accusation, a detour perfectly placed to strip compassion of memory, blindfold reason, and silence every beating heart. And I'm going to end with a recent poem. This is, I think, the first time that I've read this. It's called Like Pieces of Words Too Tired to Pick Up Their Feet. I woke with someone else's memory in my head. My dream had a different taste, but I didn't understand the full sweep of the change until I swung my feet onto the cold floor and realized I knew nothing beyond my bedroom door. Exploring this place I lived took well into the afternoon. The clothes in my closet were 2 sizes too large, and I thought, I hate lime green, but discovered shirts, scarves, even underwear in that hue. What confused me most was my old memory taunting me from around the edges of the new, like pieces of words too tired to pick up their feet and run. The moment I knew the challenge might be too great was when I began to sense a blocked few years of my childhood hovering just beneath the surface after all the work it took to unearth what I forgot the first time around. Now, I wonder who has my memory. Does it roam in someone else's head, or is it dispensed to a realm where everything is forgotten and empty faces wish for even the most horrific image as proof they are alive? Thank you.
Que bueno. One more round of applause for Margaret and SWANEE and Jillian and Andrew and Kelly all. In addition to the gift of the ikebana, Charlie made a bouquet for Margaret. Margaret, we're so thankful that you're able to come and be with us this 50th summer writing program. You are forever our comrade of summer. Please accept these flowers from us. Solamente no más. The rest of the evening is yours. Yeah. Thank you to the PAC crew.